A journalist stands up and addresses Michael Jordan in front of the entire room. "You've spoken out about Gaza. You often talk about justice, so say it clearly. Do you condemn Iran for its strikes against Israel?" Jordan fixes his gaze on the journalist, takes a few seconds, and then responds. What he says is nothing like what anyone expected. His response makes the entire room rise to their feet. The streets of Geneva are calm that day, but inside the Palais des Nations, the atmosphere is tense. For days, images of strikes between Israel and Iran have flooded the screens. Military targets, power plants, and missiles on one side. Civilians trapped in the night, injured children, and displaced families on the other. An international conference has been urgently convened. Officially, it's about humanitarian aid. Unofficially, everyone knows the balance of power is shifting. Michael Jordan wasn't supposed to be there. He had declined several invitations in recent months, but this time, he accepted without explanation. He took an early morning flight, alone, no media, no photos upon arrival. He entered the room like an ordinary guest, dressed in a simple gray suit, almost unnoticeable. Around him are diplomats, NGO representatives, a few artists, and former political figures. The atmosphere is polite but cold. Every word is carefully measured. Jordan sits next to a female doctor from Lebanon. They exchange few words. He mostly listens, his eyes fixed on the numbers projected on the screen: death tolls, displaced people, logistical needs. But what strikes him most are the faces, those of children displayed in silence between the charts. When it's his turn to speak, he initially declines, shaking his head. He prefers to listen. This isn't his field, he says. He's no expert. But during a break, an American journalist approaches. He's not here for a private chat. He wants a statement, a soundbite, something definitive. With his microphone extended, he speaks loudly. "Mr. Jordan, we know your stance on Gaza, your words about suffering. So be clear, do you condemn Iran for striking Israel?" The room holds its breath. This wasn't planned, not at this moment, not like this. Jordan remains still, staring at the journalist. He doesn't respond immediately. The cameras are rolling, eyes are locked on him, expecting a stance, a condemnation, a bold statement. But Jordan doesn't raise his voice or shy away. He simply opens his mouth, and in a few seconds, what he says doesn't align with any expectations. It's calm, measured, without labels, and it's enough to make the entire room tremble. He looks at the journalist for a long moment, not searching for words but for truth. In a simple, almost quiet voice, he says, "I'm not an expert on this conflict. I'm not a diplomat or an analyst. I don't represent any state or cause. I'm here because I was asked to speak about civilians, children, people who didn't ask for any of this. So that's where I'll stay." He pauses. The journalist keeps his microphone raised, but his eyes waver slightly. He expected something sharper, more direct. Jordan continues, "I've seen the images like everyone else. I've heard about the strikes, the deaths, the injuries. If I understand correctly, Iran responded to an attack. They defended their territory. That's what I've read, what I've heard. But I'm not here to judge. I don't know what's true, who started it, and I don't want to play that game." His gaze remains fixed on a man in front of him. Not hostile, not wary, just human. "You ask if I condemn Iran, and I'll tell you this. When a bomb falls on a hospital, I don't look at who sent it. When a child dies in their mother's arms, I don't check their passport. I think only of them, and I think this world forgets to do that too often." A shiver runs through the room. No one moves. Jordan doesn't raise his voice or impose himself, yet his presence fills the space. I don't have the words for politics. I don't have the maps, the reports, or the secrets. I just have what I've seen, what I've heard, and what I feel. And what I feel today is sorrow, sadness for all those who aren't heard. He lowers his eyes for a moment, then raises them again. You can put that in your article if you want. You can say Michael Jordan didn't condemn anyone. But I've seen faces, and what I condemn is that those faces disappear in silence. He says no more and steps back slightly. The room remains frozen. The journalist lowers his microphone, doesn't respond, doesn't smile. He understands. It wasn't a refusal or an attack. It was something else. It was Jordan. No one speaks immediately. The journalist stands for a moment, then sits down slowly, as if he's lost something. The room stays silent. Not a word, not a whisper, just that strange, profound silence that sometimes follows the simplest words. Jordan sits back down, places his microphone on the table, and looks straight ahead, not seeking anyone's gaze. He doesn't care if people agree. He expects nothing. To his right, the Lebanese doctor gives him a slight, sincere nod. To his left, a man from an African NGO leans over, places a hand on his arm, and whispers, "Thank you." Jordan doesn't respond. He simply raises his eyes, knowing the word was true. A moderator tries to resume the conference, shifting to logistics and medical supply routes, but the tone is different, less mechanical, less cold. Even he seems to struggle to restart the machine. In the back of the room, a woman discreetly wipes her eyes. She works for a humanitarian mission in Gaza. She knows the images, the silences. It's not that opinions have changed. It's something else, something subtler, a shift. For a moment, the conference feels human again. Several journalists leave the room. They have no more questions. They look at their empty notebooks. Hard to write about a moment like this. There's no obvious headline, no catchy quote. A member of the Swiss delegation approaches Jordan during the break and says he could have stuck to talking about sports as planned, stayed within the frame. Jordan looks at him and replies calmly, "I didn't come to speak, but I couldn't stay silent either." The Swiss man nods and walks away. There's nothing more to say. Outside, a few journalists wait, hoping for a comment, a follow-up. Jordan doesn't leave right away. He stays, talks to a translator, ensures a shipment of school supplies will reach Rafah in the coming days. He wants to be certain. These are the things he cares about verifying, not speeches. When he finally steps outside, he walks past the cameras without looking. A woman calls out softly, "You said what needed to be said, Mr. Jordan." He stops for a second and replies, "It's not what needed to be said. It's just what I felt." Then he continues on his way. In the hours that follow, news channels return to their usual cycle: strikes, death tolls, tensions. Some conference footage airs, but it's edited. Jordan's moment isn't included. It's not clear enough, not sharp enough, not marketable. In a newsroom in Paris, a journalist reads Jordan's words from a wire report. He rereads them several times, then closes his screen. He knows these kinds of words don't fit in a ticker. They don't fuel debate, they quiet it. In Geneva, those who were there keep talking about him. Not to repeat what he said, but to describe the atmosphere, the silence, the calm, the way he looked, listened, and owned his lack of expertise. A Spanish diplomat crosses paths with a Lebanese doctor in a hallway and asks, "Why do you think he came?" She replies simply, "Maybe because he needed to." The diplomat smiles and nods. Back at his hotel, Jordan doesn't mention the conference. He greets the staff at the front desk, almost apologizing for being recognized. He goes to his room, opens the window, and looks out at the calm, distant city. He turns on the TV, flips through channels, and lands on a documentary about displaced children in Yemen. He watches for a few minutes, then turns it off. Silence suits him better. The next morning, he leaves the hotel quietly, leaving a note for the cleaning staff. "Thank you for the welcome. It was peaceful." That's all. At the airport, a young security officer recognizes him but hesitates to speak. As he hands back Jordan's passport, he whispers, "My father cried last night. He was watching you on the screen." Jordan looks at him gently, shakes his hand, and says, "That's why I came." On the flight back, he doesn't sleep. He thinks about the images he saw, the ones not shown. He doesn't think about his speech, the comments, or the journalist's question. He thinks about a phrase he didn't say, but keeps deep inside. You don't always choose the right side, but you can choose not to close your eyes, and sometimes that's enough. Jordan lands in Chicago that afternoon. He steps off the plane without an entourage or spotlight, declining official vehicles. He walks like anyone else, a small bag in hand, a cap pulled low. At the exit, a journalist waits but doesn't call out. He watches, hesitates. Jordan passes by without looking, not avoiding, just choosing not to engage. He takes a taxi to a simple address in the suburbs, visiting an association he supported for years, helping young people, refugees, forgotten children. He doesn't mention where he's been. He sits with them, watches a game, shares a meal. When a boy asks if he's seen bombs, Jordan replies softly, "I've seen faces." That's what I hold on to. The next day, no major media outlet mentions him. No headlines, no viral videos. The story didn't catch. Not clear enough, not dramatic enough. Good. But in quieter networks, among associations and those who read between the lines, his name circulates. An amateur video of the conference begins to spread. No edits, no effects, just his calm, clear voice. Those who watch it understand. It's not a political message, it's a human one. An NGO leader in Lebanon sends a message to his team: listen to Jordan, not to analyze, but to remember why we do what we do. A doctor in Gaza plays the clip in a waiting room, letting it speak for itself. Jordan doesn't read the reactions or follow the buzz. He has no official account, no interest in whether his words were liked. That wasn't the point. He said what he felt, in his own words, not claiming to be right, just aiming for something true, something sincere. In the days that follow, public figures seize on his words, twisting them, co-opting them. Some say Jordan refused to condemn. Others claim he supported Iran. He doesn't respond or correct them. It's not his fight. He's no flag bearer or shield. He saw wounded children, destroyed hospitals, forgotten civilians. He heard mothers speak of their sons, and that's why he spoke. Once calmly, clearly, humanly. The rest he leaves to those who shout. Jordan doesn't shout. In a Marseille high school, a philosophy teacher starts her class differently. She plays a short audio clip, just Jordan's voice, no image. She doesn't say his name and asks her students what they hear. The silence, the tone, the words. They're stunned. Some thought he couldn't speak, had nothing to say. That day, they understand something else. In Tunis, an independent journalist writes an article calling Jordan's moment a suspended instant. He doesn't explain it. He just describes what he felt. The article is shared thousands of times, quietly, far from the noise of major newsrooms. In Beirut, a teenager scrawls a phrase on a football field wall. "I don't look at where the bomb came from. I look at who it kills." He doesn't sign it. He doesn't need to. Those who read it know. Jordan doesn't change his routine. He spends his days with family, his charitable commitments, and moments of solitude. He declines all media requests, even the kind ones. He doesn't want to revisit what he said or explain it. He wants that moment to stay untouched. One evening, a former teammate calls to congratulate him. He starts to speak, but Jordan interrupts gently. "Thank you, but it wasn't a speech. It was a feeling. That's all." The other man falls silent. He understands. In Geneva, an UNICEF staffer sends an internal memo suggesting they invite Jordan to another conference, not to talk politics, but to speak about silence, about the power of those who don't speak to persuade, but to remind us what matters. The idea is rejected. Too risky, too vague, they say. Jordan doesn't fit a mold. He's a presence. But that presence lingers in schools, hospitals, homes, and associations, where words resonate slowly, where memory doesn't need virality. Jordan doesn't follow the reactions, but he sees something else. Letters, messages, looks. A man in the street says simply, "Thank you for speaking for those who can't." Jordan replies, "I just said what was in my heart." Then he moves on, without stopping, without looking back. For him, it's not a stance, not a strategy, not even a statement. It's a way of being. One morning at his home, an envelope awaits. No official seal, no logo, just a handwritten letter from abroad, the writing uneven but careful. Jordan opens it slowly. Inside are 3 pages and a photograph. He looks at the photo first. A boy, 12 or 13, standing in front of a destroyed house. Stones, metal, a colorless sky. But on his face, a faint, defiant smile. He reads the letter. It's from a man named Reza, a sports teacher and former amateur goalkeeper. He lost his sister in recent strikes. She was a night shift nurse, not a militant, not a soldier, just a woman who cared for others. His nephew, the boy in the photo, saw their home collapse. He was injured in the arm, but survived. Since then, he barely speaks, except for 2 words, Ball and Jordan. Reza didn't write to ask for help or share his pain, but to say thank you. When we heard your voice here, it wasn't the words that mattered. It was the intention. You didn't shout, you didn't point fingers. You looked, and in that look we felt seen, if only for a minute. That was enough. Jordan stops reading. He sets the letter down and looks at the photo again, at that strange smile, a mix of defiance and distress. He sits still for several minutes, then takes a blank sheet of paper. He doesn't know what to write. He's not used to this. He starts, scratches it out, tries again. Finally, he writes one sentence. I can't change what you've lost, but I promise not to forget you. He signs it simply, MJ. He slips the photo into a small folder and keeps the letter. That evening, he dines in silence. His children ask if he's okay. He says yes, but they sense something heavy, intimate within him. He goes to bed earlier than usual, places the letter on his nightstand, and turns off the light. In the dark, he thinks of the boy, the house, the smile, and tells himself that sometimes a true word doesn't erase anything, but it prevents total collapse. Days later, a call comes, not from a major organization or TV network, but from a volunteer in a small Lion-based association, a woman of Iranian descent. She apologizes profusely for disturbing him, hesitating to continue. He says gently, "Go ahead." She explains they're holding a silent event in memory of children killed in the strikes, all origins included. No speeches, no flags, just a walk, a circle of light, candles, a ball, and a notebook for messages. She says the boy from the photo, now in France through their temporary shelter network, doesn't speak much, but asks for one thing: to see the calm man from the microphone. Jordan listens, asks for the date and place, then says, okay. He tells no one, not even those close to him. He wants no organization, no photos, no fuss. He arrives in Lyon the day before, stays in a small hotel outside the city, and the next morning, in a simple jacket and cap, walks through the streets. The venue is modest, a repurposed gym. Inside, about 30 people, women, children, a few elders, stand around a circle of candles. In the center, a gray ball and an open notebook. When Jordan enters, no one moves. He hasn't announced himself, but a woman recognizes him, then another. The silence grows denser. He approaches slowly, looks at the candles, and says nothing. He places his hand on the ball, then turns to the notebook, reading the broken phrases, children's words, names. He takes the pen, writes a single line, and doesn't sign it. Then he looks up and sees him. The boy from the photo, slightly taller, arms still bandaged, staring at him. Jordan crouches down, says nothing, and extends his hand. The boy hesitates, then places his palm against Jordan's, lightly, without fear. In that gentle touch, something passes, a silent recognition, a promise kept. Jordan stands, looks around. No one films, no one speaks. It's exactly what he hoped for. He leaves the gym an hour later, not sneaking out, not rushing, but saluting each person with a nod, a look. He doesn't shake hands for show or exchange empty words. He leaves only a presence. Outside, the light is crisp, of fine rain falling. He takes shelter under an awning, hands in his pockets. The calm around him feels like what he's always sought: space, silence, truth. A volunteer approaches, a bit shy, holding a small bag. Inside is a worn child-sized jersey, the boy's. She says he wanted to give it to him. Jordan freezes for a moment, then shakes his head gently and smiles, telling to keep it. He's the one giving the kickoff now. She smiles back, eyes wet. Jordan leaves, walking slowly to the station, declining taxis. He loves crossing the city on foot, feeling the hum of the streets, the faces he passes without words. Those who recognize him sense not to stop him. In the train back, he pulls out a notebook, not to write a speech, but to jot down a name. The boy's, and next to it a single word: hope. He closes the notebook, watches the landscape pass. Fields, roofs, power lines, nothing extraordinary, but everything is there. Meanwhile, in Lyon, in the small gym, the candles burn out one by one. The ball remains in the center, the notebook closed, the room empty, but the air still carries respect, listening, a weight now soothing. The boy says nothing, but that night, in his room, he sits on his bed, takes a blank sheet, and draws a rectangle, lines a ball in the center. At the back of the field, a man standing, silent, present. He doesn't sign it, pins it to the wall, and for the first time since arriving in France, he sleeps through the night. Jordan returns home quietly, kisses his children, looks at his wife without a word. She reads his eyes and asks, "Was it important?" He replies, "It wasn't big, but it was right." Then he walks away, calm, whole, without explanation. He knows what he lived won't make the news. And for him, that absence of a trace is proof it was real. Weeks pass, and as always, the news moves on. New strikes, new targets, new maps for experts to dissect. The faces, the silences, the simple gestures are forgotten. But in a Lyon suburb school, a gym teacher tries something unusual. He asks his students to name a figure who inspires them. Not for fame or achievements, but for something they said or did. No obligation. Some name artists, activists, familiar role models. But a boy at the back, dark hair, arms still stiff, raises his hand. He speaks softly. "Jordan." The teacher smiles, expecting stories of championships or dunks, but the boy adds, because he didn't shout, didn't pick a side. He just spoke the truth in his heart. Silence falls over the class. A girl whispers, "I want to do that too." In Chicago, Jordan knows nothing of this moment and likely never will. It doesn't matter. That morning, he sips coffee at a cafe terrace, far from it all, watching passersby. A man greets him discreetly, hand on heart. Jordan nods back, nothing more. He thinks of the boy often, not with sadness, but with calm. He knows he didn't fix anything, didn't stop any bombs, but he was there at a precise moment, in a precise place, to listen, to speak, to extend a hand. He didn't shout for justice or peace. He spoke of children, of people, of ordinary lives. Some didn't understand, called him cowardly, vague, naive. But those who were there understood. In Geneva, in the empty conference hall, a technician packs up the microphones and finds a forgotten sheet, a scribbled agenda, folded. He's about to toss it when he sees a name, Jordan, guest observer. Not a speaker, not an expert, just an observer. He smiles, folds it carefully, and slips it into his pocket. He doesn't know why, but something tells him that name, at that moment, carried something more. In a world of noise, agitation, and endless conflict, perhaps what lingers isn't who spoke the loudest, but who knew when to stay silent.